Quite a show last night, the rain and lightning and thunder. I understand, we were we were woken up in the middle of the night, awakened, and Jan and I are both going, oh my God, what's that sound? And the dog's going, freaking out. It's like, oh, for crying out loud, it's the thunder. Just kind of kept going, and of course that kept going. Other parts of town didn't get thunder and lightning at all, but a lot of rain. We got just a nice rain. So, Allie made some, Mexican sweet bread. Oh my God. Whoa.
No need in front of us.
Oh. Man. Well, I had to try it out, make sure it was okay for all of you.
Yeah.
So, it's a really, really light gingerbread, kind of like, but it is gluten-free. Yeah. All right. T-shirts and sweatshirts. Whoever is in charge of making sure I don't do anything stupid is fired. Retired. I worked my whole life for this shirt. Don't try to figure me out. I'm a special kind of twisted. Also there's tomatoes in the back. So slight charge for those. Apparently the eggs, if anyone's gotten eggs in the last couple of weeks, if you got any issues with eggs, talk to Sandra. I guess the chickens are drinking lots and lots of water this time of year. So the eggs are interesting. But they're fine. But they're perfectly fine to eat. But they just look odd. So if you're not sure, call Sandra, talk to her. Everything's cool. We do have a couple patron saints by the name of George Lennon and John Carlin. See, you caught it at least. At least you caught it. John Lennon and George Carlin, of course. So, and John said, he's quoting on love. Love is real. Real is love. Love is feeling. Feeling love. Love is wanting to be loved. Love is touch. Touch is love. Love is reaching. Reaching love. Love is asking to be loved. Love is you and me. Love is knowing we can be. Love is free. Free is love. Love is living. Living love. Love is needed to be loved. So, sounds like a song, right? So, probably is. And George equally is inspirational. Here's a bumper stick I'd like to see. We're the proud parents of a child whose self-esteem is sufficient that he doesn't need us promoting his minor scholastic achievements on the back of our car. All right. Oh, forgot to get a final joke. Joke's on me. Hey, I'll be back in a jiffy. Guess what? Jiffy actually is a real word. A jiffy is an actual unit of time, most commonly interpreted as 1/100th of a second. Who knew? Be back in a jiffy. Okay. Patience, endurance is godlike. Longfellow. Patience is a necessary ingredient of genius. I like that. And the noblest motive is the public good. I like that. The noblest motive is the public good. I hear you at. Which one did I do last? Okay, experience of focusing on very few virtues. Yeah, I did those ones. Okay. I have not been afraid of excess. Excess on a case. I did that one. I see what I did. Virtues, like essences, lose their fragrance when exposed.
Oh, yeah.
Procrastination is the thief of time.
I resemble that.
Boy, my busy time is coming up, and like I do every year, if I get a phone call, I get back to them. If it's 5 minutes, it's too long. Just because otherwise I get so far behind. That's not fun at all. So, One-liners. If a firefighter fights fire and a crime fighter fights crime, what does a freedom fighter fight? I don't know. If a cow laughs, does milk come out of his nose? Oh. If you're driving at the speed of light and turn on your headlights, what happens? Why do they, I have wondered this one, why do they put braille dots on the keypad of a drive-up ATM?
I know, right?
Why would what would Geronimo say if he jumped out of an airplane? Why do they call apartments when they're all stuck together?
Oh, yeah.
So, all right, that's it. Ta-da! Let's sing a song. It's always interesting. I just love the rain. I mean, it just changes. I mean, literally the ions in the air are changed. And we don't get much rain around here, so. All right, we're gonna sing a couple of Deneen songs today, one now and one at the end. So we're gonna do As One.
Fry bread. For those of you who have not tried fry bread, it works. Anybody heard of an Indian taco? It works as an Indian taco. Salsa and meat and cheese and onions and other things that you don't want to pronounce. For sweets, cinnamon, butter, honey, peanut butter, crunchy of course, and something called wajapi. Wajapi is a traditional berry sauce that was made up by the Native Americans. If you've never tried wajapi, try that. Mary Lou's brought some fry bread this morning, and she has some preserves that are very close to what wajapi would be, and it is, I'm sure, going to be quite good. This all contributes to the survival of life. They took whatever they had and made of it what they could. And in doing so, excelled with it, and it became a staple of diets in many traditions. It still is. In the Jewish tradition, challah bread, that's a ceremonial bread that's made and a piece is torn off and set aside as an offering. So in that particular tradition, not only does it celebrate, it presents the opportunity for offering to a higher being. Whether it's God, Jesus, Creator, universe, really doesn't matter, but something greater than who we are. So in a variety of traditions, throughout this circle of life, throughout this world that we call a planet, bread has been used many different times in many different ways and continues to do so. Build Strong Bodies 12 Ways. Anybody remember that one? What was it? Wonder Bread. The yuckiest white bread you could find. I used to remember making dough balls out of that and fishing with it. See? Okay. So much for the wonder and Wonder Bread. Anybody remember the Helms Bakery Man? When I was a kid, they'd run around in old Suburbans and they'd have drawers on either side. And I can hear the bell, the toot whistle now of the Helms Bakery, and he'd go through neighborhoods and he'd stop. And you could buy donuts and bread and all kinds of cool stuff on it, much like the Ice Cream Man. It was a Helms Bakery, and that's what they used to do.
Where was that?
This was down in California. So most anything you talk about, any society you talk about, any way you talk about, bread is a staple in that particular society. Now, you go to jail, worst kind of jail, what kind of food do you get? Bread and water, okay? So even in the worst of conditions, bread is available. May not be the best you could get, but it's available. So, moving on with that. Whatever the tradition, when bread is available, things are better. So let's talk about that. When you want to make bread, there's really kind of three things you got to fuss with. You got to make it, you got to bake it, and then you got to break it. You got to make the bread, you got to bake the bread, and then you got to break the bread for others. So let's talk about making bread. When you make bread, what do you need to do?
You need to get started.
Starter if it's sourdough, but you need ingredients. Not only do you need ingredients, you need the correct ingredients at the correct times. If you will, you also have to know how long it's going to take you. All of the need has to be as it needs to be to increase the probability of success. And what that means is, when you pull all the ingredients together, can you throw them all in at the same time?
No.
I've done that. It doesn't look like bread. Probably wouldn't taste like bread either if I went there. Now, remember the paste that we used to make in elementary school? How many of you ate that? That'd be like the bread I would make if I didn't follow the directions. So with the ingredients of bread, one, you need to know what kind of bread you want to make. You need to understand the ingredients associated with the kind of bread you want to make. And you need to assemble the ingredients, some concurrently, some sequentially, in the correct way for the kind of bread you want to make. All of that needs to be done. And then once you get it all together, what do you need to do? Knead it, let it rise. So not only is there processing, not only is there work, regardless of what kind of bread you want to make, but there's waiting. And when you wait, when you make bread, what is your expectation? That it will rise, it will become, it will transform, it will become something different than what you started with. Because the hopes are that with the ingredients that you've put together in the right way, with the heat that you have, all the other kinds of things, you have the expectation that when you uncover the bread, it will become something different. It will have risen. It will become closer to what you want it to be. But is it at that point what you want it to be? What else needs to happen? You've got to bake it. So first you have to make the bread. Put all the stuff in it, this, that, and the other. And I've heard people pinch of salt, handful of this, handful of that. I guarantee you if I did that, it would not be anything that would be edible. I'd probably rather eat the paste at that point. So once you get it all ready to go, then you have to bake it. What is baking about? It's about heat. You have an oven. Oven is dangerous. As in life, anything that you expect, anything you hope for will have pieces and parts of danger, will have pieces and parts of anxiety. But if the hope is strong enough that the bread, in this case, that you're going to get out of it is going to be wonderful and all that kind of stuff, you generally are willing to take the chance on the heat of the oven. Because without the heat of the oven, you don't get bread. Unless you're in southern Arizona and then you just bake it on the sidewalk. So, now we have the making of bread, all the pieces and parts. Hopefully it's risen, it's done what it's supposed to do, and now you're baking it. You've put it in the oven with the hopes that it'll come out being what you expect it to be. Well, it's in the oven, what do? You wait. So it is in life. Pieces and parts of life are active and progressive. Pieces and parts in life are reactive. Pieces and parts in life are waiting. And it's absolutely correct and appropriate to have those parts of life as waiting because that's a necessary piece of the larger scheme of things. Without the waiting, you don't get the baking. Without the baking, you don't get the bread. Without the bread, you don't eat. So not only are there pieces and parts that go along with this, those pieces and parts have to happen in a certain way, and each of them are adequate and appropriate in their own time. Can you hurry the baking? I can, and it'll burn. The inside will be dough, gooey. So it has to be done correctly, the right temperature, the right way, the right pan, the right this, the right that. So making bread is a bit more comprehensive than you might think. All the pieces and parts have to be there in the right order. And by the way, it all has to be correct to be complete. And it all has to be complete to be correct. So as you move forward, we like to do, we don't like to wait. Guess what? If you're making bread, you get to wait. Even if you go to the store and buy it, by the time you get to the checkout line, the 12 line, and the person in front of you has got 43 items, what do you get to do? You get to wait. So it is. No matter what you do, you get to wait. Once your bread mixture is ready, it goes into the oven, you're waiting, all's well and good. Is that dead time, or does it need to be? Why is that? You can do cleanup, okay? You can do reassembly of the next loaf of bread if you want. You can clean your kitchen. You can put things away. There's a variety of things you need to do. So even in a time of waiting, if you need to, you can be doing other things while the principal thing that you're waiting on is going through its transformation. And that's what bread is. It is a transformation of Mother's ingredients into something that provides sustenance and goodness for us. So it is worth doing it correctly, doing it completely, waiting the time that's necessary. And once that time is done, then it comes out of the oven. And then what do you get to do? You get to wait. Because it needs to cool off before it's ready to eat. Yeah, I see some no's out there. I've done the same thing. You pound it out of the pan, you slash the butter on, and it's gone. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Yeah, you know, what you don't eat, you rub on your body. I know how that goes. It's nasty, but you know, you do it. But again, one has to wait. There is danger in opening that oven. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. One has to be careful. One has to understand the dangers and the anxieties associated with even that part of the process. So now it comes out and it's set on a counter. And we've made a decision to wait this particular time. So we're not going to rip and tear. We'll let the bread cool and become yet again what it needs to be. It's gone through yet another transformation. So by the time you get your ingredients all mixed, that's one transformation. You let it rise, that's 2. You throw it in the oven, you bake it, that's 3, and now it gets to cool off. That's 4. So in simply making bread, simply in quotes, there are at least 4 transformations that are going to occur and must occur in the right order, in the right time frame. And what do we need to do during that time? We wait. Waiting is a part of life. Salivate. Depending on who you are, that may be part of life as well. I don't know. But the waiting, as much as we don't like to do it, as much as we get ornery about it at a stoplight or whatever, waiting is an adequate and appropriate part of making bread. It's an adequate and appropriate part of making the bread of life. It is an adequate and appropriate part of life. It is just what it is. So now you've got the bread all baked up. It's cooled off. Now you can pull it out of the pan. Then what?
Slice it and put honey butter on it.
Okay. Or do you? How many have you slice bread or how many have you tear it?
I slice.
Okay, that's a choice. Depends on what kind you're making. But the tearing or the slicing is your next choice compared to bread. And now it's the next choice in life too. Are you going to tear into life? Are you going to slice into life? How are you going to manage the next piece? What are you going to put on that bread? Crunchy peanut butter. Okay, we got that.
My teeth.
I'm going to let that go. Just let that go right by. So, honey, peanut butter, jam, jelly, cinnamon bread, coconut oil. How come I haven't heard ham, cheese, tomatoes, mayonnaise? What I'm offering is, don't limit yourself to the kinds of things that you can add to your bread of life. The bread of life is just a start for you. You can add whatever additions are appropriate for the situation. If it's morning, I'm going to have a cup of coffee and a piece of bread with some butter, maybe some jam on it. If it's afternoon or evening, I may have a big old ham sandwich and lettuce and tomatoes and onions and anything else I can pull out of the fridge. Because that's what's appropriate and adequate for the particular time that I'm going to use this bread of life. So what you add, what you begin with, what you end with, is up to you. You can make those choices as you go through using the bread of life. And it's those choices that lead you down the path of life. It's those choices that lead you to yet other choices. Do I put mayonnaise and mustard on first? Yeah, that works. Then what? Another piece of, no, I've got to put a piece of ham on. So what happens? You're back again to the concurrency of life. Some of the things you can do concurrently. I can put mayonnaise and mustard on 2 slices of bread at the same time. As long as I can walk and chew gum at the same time, I can do that. But can I put ham on first? Can I put cheese on first? Likely not. So I've got to do it in a certain kind of a sequence in hopes of having at the end what my expectations were. So you can keep that in mind as well. And oh, by the way, once the bread is baking, do we have any control over how the outcome is going to be? We have a hope. We have an expectation, but do we have any control? Can we control the temperature of the oven? To a certain extent we can. We can put everything and all the pieces and parts together and have a hope for the outcome. But the actual outcome I would offer is beyond us. It's something larger than we are. And it's something that we can work with, but we cannot control. So, we've made the bread, we've baked the bread, now we're going to break the bread. Again, tearing or slicing. That's the first choice you make. You're going to share the bread with somebody? You're going to allow them to have the whole loaf? All of these are continuing choices based on the completion of the loaf of bread of life that you've made. So what are your expectations? Are you going to sit with an enemy? Are you going to offer that enemy bread so that they're no longer an enemy? Are you going to sit with someone who has less than you and offer up what you have to them? Are you going to help them understand how to make bread? All of these are choices that you can make as you go along, and every choice you make then sets up the next set of choices. All of which, with Creator's help certainly, is up to you to decide. I would offer that in this breaking of bread, the sharing is one way to nurture. It's also one way to nourish. When you share something, you nourish yourself in that sharing. You open up and you allow Spirit to work through you. In that sharing, you allow someone else to receive something that they may not potentially have. In that sharing, there is yet another connection that's made. So even in the idea of sitting down with someone and sharing a loaf of bread, there's connection, there's generosity, there's a variety of things through that way of thinking and doing things that you may not think about in other ways. And that's all well and good. Now, I'm not suggesting you walk around with a loaf of bread unless it's a baguette with a crust on it. You bang somebody around the head if you feel like you need to. But other than that, you got to pick the correct venue to make all that work. Now, this sharing only works if, back when we had all the ingredients, we followed all the instructions. We followed the pertinent working and waiting and working, and did all of that to get to the point where the hopes of the finished bread result in the bread of life that we want. And it's important to follow all these steps because the result really is your bread of life. This becomes the way for you to go forward. It not only feeds your soul, but it can, in fact, feed the soul of others. So, at this particular point, those of you who said what kind of bread you were, are you still the same kind of bread? If you are, that's fine. If you're not, that's okay too. But let's go into a meditation and see what happens.